All right, Warren, with your permission, I call the meeting to order. It
Please.
looks like we have a quorum. Sebastian, I'm told at the point in time that you can produce minutes for the committee to consider, we'll adopt them. So whenever you do that, we'll do it all at once. Okay. And welcome. We're very, very grateful that we have you. It's very exciting. All right, guys, I made up this agenda, and the first includes the current referrals. The first of which is that hasn't already been addressed is 524 Mill Road. We have organized a site visit for Friday the 14th at 11 a.m. And I would just ask how many of you could attend. They're asking me, the owner and the architect are asking me who might attend. So
I can attend.
Catherine, Anne.
I can attend.
All right. And Warren, can you go?
Yes.
And Nancy?
Can you hear me?
I can now. Can you attend on Friday?
I will be late.
Okay. How late do you think?
Depends how late my husband's doctor is.
Oh, all right. Well, if you can't make it, we'll feed back to you because you more than anybody know how important this property is.
Okay.
And what over the years the degradation has been. So I think it's important to the extent that you can go, but if not, we'll take pictures and forward them on to you. The owner is a gentleman named Chris Heinz, Heintz, and the architect is a guy named Jordan Valdina. All right. And I will tell you only the three things that I'm aware of. And this is one of two pre-application site visits that are on the agenda. I'll tell you one, that there has been some unpermitted work done on the barn, which is one element that we'll be taking a look at. Was unpermitted and done by the prior owner, and this owner is obligated to deal with that per his purchase of the property. They also, I'm under the impression, want to change the sort of transportation within the site. And they also want, for those of you who are familiar with the property, to move the little playhouse, the little 19th century playhouse that is visible from Mill Road. And so all of those things will trigger archaeology and, you know, architectural preservation and all that. So it feels to me like it's an important visit, number one. And number two, I know that property from way back to Sam Hall. So I have a particular concern. Yeah, I know you know him, Nancy. I have a particular fondness for it and a concern for it. So I will let them know how many people are coming, and thank you very much for doing that. Okay, the second is, again, an entity that is not applied. This is, as I sent to you, a open piece of property on Russell Avenue. It's 5.14 acres, whatever it is, 13. And there is no indication of what the owner or the engineer, being Mark Rominski, wants to do there. So I don't even know why this has been referred to us at this stage, but Warren and I have been talking about the role of this committee vis-a-vis both pre-applications and post-applications that I think would be an interesting dialogue to have a little bit of today. This, the only thing that I think one could deduce would be Anne, because all we can do is drive by and look at it.
Mhm.
There's no plans, no idea of what they intend to do, when they intend to do it, or anything else. So maybe the fact that it is placed in the historic district of Rhine Cliff, maybe you could tell by driving by or looking at it. I don't know what else any of us.
Does it have a number or anything?
It does, and
I mean, I
that
saw the
last,
parcel number, but does
Yeah.
it have a street number?
no, it doesn't, which is why there's this awkward, not only do we not know why we're going there, what they're gonna do, or how we can be of service, there's no address either.
It might be a
Provided.
little hard to know when you're looking
Well,
at it.
if you just sort of follow the map that I sent you of Russ, you can see it's the second, it's the only thing not built on, if that's
Okay.
helpful.
Okay,
On the left side of the road as you go up Russell Avenue. It is a pretty odd thing to be asking us to do. And Warren, I know you and I decided we didn't want to talk about this too much, but I do think it's worth addressing the varying degrees of referrals to us that are starting to happen. And do you want to do that? You're better than I am at this.
Well, I'm not better than you at anything, but I would say I believe this property was referred to us simply because of its location within the National Historic Landmark District. But this particular stretch of Russell Avenue, which is on the east side, of Kelly Street or whatever it changes its name to as it heads south onto Morton Road, I don't know that there are any old or historic residences once you leave the immediate confines of the hamlet. And so this is an extension of Russell that
Uh-oh.
travels some distance to the east with a lot of later, larger lots. And as you note, this one is unbuilt on. The ones that are not, I don't think there's any historic significance to any of the architecture. So the only thing that could be there would be perhaps some archaeology, but until we know a site for the house or any other proposed improvements, it's hard to know how we could evaluate that at all, to be honest with you.
right.
But
I
in
think-
general, Kathy, what you were alluding to is discussions we've had, and the planning board has suggested that we could be more involved, a greater resource to applicants before they even come before the planning board. But this is a little difficult because our role continues to be evolving and not totally defined. And I don't think that we can be the gatekeeper for everything that goes before the planning board just because it might be within a certain district. So I think we need to get a little clarity, perhaps from the town board, about what our role is. I think we have the expertise to offer advice to applicants, but it doesn't seem to me that necessarily the way the planning and zoning process is set up right now in the town of Rhinebeck planning board. And frankly, I don't know that they should, because when the zoning administrator refers applications that come to her first and says, you need to go to zoning or you need to go to planning or both, that's what really starts the process with the town. And so it may be that an application isn't even ready for that. And if it's not ready for that, I don't know why they should be coming to us up front. It seems to me it's putting a bigger burden on us and our time than if it goes to at least the initial wicket of being reviewed by the zoning administrator, who determines what approvals it needs from the town. So while I guess I just to recapitulate, I'm happy for our committee to offer our insight, experience, expertise as a resource, but I don't think that should happen before an application actually gets through its first threshold review by the town. Otherwise, we're going to be looking at these things over and over again up front when they get referred from the planning board. And I just think we need to sort that out now. Otherwise, we're going to be swamped. I mean, we're already kind of swamped in my view.
All of that is well said, and I would only add two other things. And the Grinnell Street project, Warren, is a perfect example. That is the house, guys, that is contiguous to the hotel on Grinnell in Rhine Cliff. And we got sent And we didn't bother the committee with it because there was no, according to the applicant and the applicant's attorney, no real work to be done on that house except in kind. In other words, replacing deck wood and painting the same color and all that. It turns out that, so having said, once it was referred to us, if it's in kind, we understand, and the committee has no role in addressing it. It turns out that the zoning administrator, who is now back, Michelle, sent them a special use permit requirement. And so, having already addressed this application once, when the applicant fills it out, the special use permit, it's going to come right back to us. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so we've been asked at least 2 or maybe 3 times. And I think that this committee has to set its guidelines for when and how we're called upon, and then what form that expertise takes, either directly to the applicant or directly to the planning board. I think the problem is you guys are too good at what you do. And so now applicants see, oh, wait, look, I can go to them first and not have to mess with them later on. And
That's the
sorry.
way it should be.
Is it? Think about it.
Unfortunately.
Think about it.
Well,
Are
I'm not saying that it's desirable for us, but the problem is going and doing things and hiring people and finishing drawings and then being told that it isn't the way to go. Suddenly everyone feels badly for the property owner because they're already moving in a direction, and how can you ask them to stop? To a certain extent, that's what we have faced at Astor Courts. Is we've come in too late in the process rather than early in the process.
But I think, Marty, as a group, and I don't know how much of this we want to get into today, maybe it's another special meeting, but we really have to look at what the authority, and you've raised this before yourself, what the authority of the committee is, where is its intervention appropriate, and to what entity do we offer that advisory input. And unfortunately, we are, Mill Road on Friday is the perfect example. This is a potential applicant who has not fulfilled the full requirements for applying to the planning board. They're coming to this committee first for insight that may or may not be appropriate vis-a-vis the planning board. So it's a tricky, and also we're only a committee, we're not a board. Remember that also. Maybe we should be a board, but we're not. And so I think we have to delicately dance around for now what the intervention and at what level is appropriate, what intervention there is, and what level it's appropriate. I didn't even mean to open this, but now that we have.
No, you did. And actually, Kathy, you and Marty are touched on a key, I would say, a flaw in the way applications are handled, not just in Rhinebeck, but throughout the Hudson Valley, and for all I know, throughout New York. The actual procedure is you're supposed to apply for a building permit with such information as allows the zoning officer and the building inspector to make a determination of whether you could get a building permit or if you need planning or zoning approval. But anyone in their right mind would not want to advance their plans as far as being ready for a building permit application when there are significant unknowns about whether they're going to get permission to do what they need, what they want to do, whether it involves a zoning variance or planning approval. So in fact, my feeling, and it's been for years, is that there should be, much as there's a pre-application conference with representatives of the planning board, there should be a pre-screening of just the sort that allows an applicant to meet with representatives of the planning board and possibly a committee such as ours to review their plans and say, yes, you're on a right track, or no, you need to give this further consideration before you can come to us. Because if you're going to need variances, or you're going to need site plan or special use permits, and there are fundamental problems with what you're proposing to do, you need to know that before you've had consultants on board for a year developing elaborate plans. And yet that is the way it's set up, and in every community around here. But I don't think that we can necessarily change that at our level, but getting involved early, as Marty said, and as you've noted, actually does work both to, I think, the town's advantage and the applicant's advantage. I'm just not sure that our committee should be, again, that gatekeeper.
So
Yeah.
can we use that to segue? What's the next thing on the agenda?
That would be your intake form, Marty.
Okay, perfect.
But,
Right.
but wait
No.
a minute.
I'm saying this addressing, go ahead, Kathleen.
Yeah, I just want to insert one other thing that
Yeah.
you would not expect me to insert, because I knew you were going there with the intake form. Sebastian's role, I believe, which he's not expecting, and I've not said it to him, this committee could have a proactive role. We could put out either on the website or social media or whatever, a variety of additional guidelines to what an applicant could find in the town code or whatever, or maps, any number of things that give somebody a head start before they come to the intake form. Go for it, Marty.
Okay, so I was just, what Warren has just said and where everyone is going means we need proper information. However, and I started working on the intake form, and I'm trying to listen very carefully. Fred cautioned us the last time we spoke to him, and he did in a very helpful way, not to move too quickly. Now, as you know, Kathleen, and Warren knows, I sent you 2 pieces of other townships of how they deal with things. And either Kathleen or Warren, one of you was kind enough to pass it on to Melody. And Melody again said, not sort of in a very nice way. And you had alerted me that she was an ally that had insight for us, seemed to say not that quick. And so I have gotten, as I was getting ready to move into an application form, and I've gotten together and Melody, by the way, offered to connect me with someone to Saratoga Springs who has a very nice little do's and don't sort of brochure, and maybe we could borrow some of that. And again, she offered to do it, but we've had 2 people say, don't go too quickly, which leaves me very confused on trying to move on a task. I think people are trying to gently say, don't be aggressive because you're going to bowl people over and there's going to be pushback. And so don't prepare an intake form. And if we don't prepare an intake form, then people don't know what we're looking for or what resources are out there.
Okay, so can I say something, Marty?
All yours.
First of all, I think that given what Warren and I have been talking about over the last 2 or 3 weeks or so, given that so much is coming now this committee's way, that I think it is more than appropriate for us to devise, maybe with Sebastian's assistance and input, an intake form that is informative for the committee and also is informative for either a potential applicant or an applicant, either via the planning board as an application considered by the board and then sent on to us, or the planning board out of pre-conference. And you know, it isn't always the planning board. Sometimes it's the building department. Sometimes it's the zoning administrator. We get all of this sent to us via every agency within the town government. And so I think you should feel more than comfortable developing an intake form that is reflective of where these things come from and what we need to know in order to address them responsibly. No pressure there, Marty.
Oh, no, I mean, I have a whole folder of things that I have been gathering from the town of New Paltz, which is similar to us in that they're underfunded and historic preservation's not a big thing there, even though they too have some wonderful resources, to groups that have really funded preservation components. I guess one of the things that, and maybe Melody could help us with it, is because she said she had a contact in Saratoga Springs, is how much is appropriate to borrow from some of these communities, if they would willfully be willing. I don't want to plagiarize anything.
Why not?
Well, don't get me wrong.
It's
I
like
mean,
public information. Why wouldn't you take it?
What if I start knocking off Warren's designs? What do you mean, why not? Or
It's
Katz's
different than
designs?
Warren's designs. It's
Well,
public information.
Designs.
All right, we'll pick up the phone and call them and ask, but I'm sure they won't care.
Okay, because we do have some stuff, but I guess, as I said, we had two fairly positioned warnings, and I don't know if it wouldn't pay, as our co-chairs, meaning you and Warren, to approach these groups and say, we've been working really hard. We would like to get the information in a more organized basis and earlier. And how would they feel about our preparing this independent form before we go ahead and do it, and then feel as if we've overstepped our bounds? Meaning, ask them if they feel that we're ready to do this.
Okay, are you talking about the planning board or are you talking about Saratoga Springs or New Paltz?
No,
Sorry, I missed-
our local,
Oh, okay.
Melody and Fred know nothing about Saratoga. Well, Melody does, but Fred certain doesn't. They both said, go slowly, which is
Okay,
just
well-
what I never do.
You mean me, Fred?
Yeah, he means Mike Trimble, I think, probably.
No, he means Fred.
Really?
Did I
Oh,
say?
Yeah.
that was it. That was a
meant-
different go slow.
Yeah,
I
but
would have just said go slow, but my reasons for saying go slow was what Marty said earlier. Try not to make too many waves, but I think for you to approach the planning board and say, hey guys, we're trying to get a little more organized and we'd like to offer you something that might save time. We have this intake form that if something is clearly has, if we
There you
just
go.
take a quick glance at the project and go, there's nothing we know of archaeologically or historically at that particular location, then they can start moving forward without as much worry about whether there's a historical or archaeological issue that might come up.
there you go.
That's-
And you know what that made me think of? I'm sorry, were you through?
No, I'm through.
Okay, it's almost like, for instance, the Russell Avenue thing, let's just say that there's a form that says, doesn't have this, doesn't have, you can just check it off. Do you know what I mean? Instead of writing over and over again, we have no issues here, we could address specific things on an intake form that may or may not be relevant to each of either the applications or the pre-referrals that come to us, and it makes it a lot easier for the committee or whatever. And Marty, you could try and make Sebastian help you with that. Sorry.
Let me ask you this, Kathleen. Russell Avenue is in a historic district, that site?
Yes, yes.
Well, the fact is there are well-published guidelines, again, everywhere, plagiarized or not, of what new construction in a historic district is supposed to address. And it has to do with scale, rhythm, roof planes, etc. And again, this stuff is all out there. If you go to TIPS, which is Technical Preservation Services, they have whole mailings, whole preservation briefs on doing this. This is our problem about getting this stuff out there, and we should be reviewing it only to the extent that if everyone who came in to do something in a historic district was presented with these 2 or 3 briefs as a reference, they would read them and then they would know what our guidelines are, because we're not going to do anything against the Secretary of Interior standards.
Okay.
As those, I'm sorry.
No, I hear exactly what you're saying, and Sebastian probably does too. If we can lean on him, you and the rest of us, to give a simplified form that has on it the resources that somebody could either click on online, or it's one sentence or whatever. And if that intake form applicable across the board to everything that's coming to us, because know this, you guys, it's only going to get busier and busier and busier for us and for the planning board too. And so I'm looking for a way for everybody to have a system or a process that is good for an applicant or a pre-application and is good for us. So maybe, Marty, you and Melody, or you, Melody, and Sebastian, whoever, can come up with something for our next meeting that we could look at, like a hard thing, you know, a print thing.
Kathy,
Yeah.
this all sounds very good, but have you noticed that many of the applications that we receive, they do not check that they're a historic district or
There
that
you
they're a
go.
historic property? Now,
Yeah.
if that can't be addressed at the beginning when they're making out a building permit, they aren't going to address the rest of our stuff. We need to make sure that the building
Department.
refers to our map and our listing of historic sites. And we have that all in the comprehensive plan. It's online. And we need to be stressing that more.
So that's a really good point, Nancy. And speaking of somebody like me, who's incredibly lazy about the comprehensive plan, I don't like to have to go looking for stuff. You know, it's dense, that plan is. And so if we as a group could pull out those particular parts that relate to the body of work that we're overseeing, I think it's a great thing to do and make available to people. It's a good point.
The other thing that they tend to do on those applications to the planning board is that they check there's no archaeological concerns when they have no way of making that evaluation.
Right.
And
Okay.
I've seen that over and over again. And
Right.
that's more complicated because you can't just look at a map and decide that, you know, that's problematic. So we probably need to think about how to address that as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And maybe you and Marty, and I keep throwing this at Sebastian, but since he is the go-to guy, I think in the future, if you could come up, if we could figure out language that makes people think about how to look at their property from an archaeological perspective, or how to consider it, or what the, you know, what the guidelines are in a couple of sentences, it would be helpful. It may not always be applicable, but at least somebody would think about it if we pulled it out.
So this all gets back to our educational mission,
Yeah,
which we hardly have the manpower to do right now.
but now we do.
Well, poor Sebastian, he's going to bolt.
No, he's not. He's not
Why?
going anywhere.
Is he, do you have him chained to his chair?
Yeah,
I
actually.
see you as sneaking out on us, Kathleen. You keep on referring to Sebastian. I say to myself, suddenly, poof, you're going to be gone.
He is, you know, I have heard wonderful, wonderful things about Sebastian, and I've said the same thing to him. He's talented, he's smart, and he's ours. So,
All
we
very
should-
valuable.
yeah,
So-
so we should use him.
The fact is, without trampling on anyone else's toes, the building application for the town or the village or whatever ideally would be, say, your house or property may be historically or archaeologically significant. You should check before filling out this application. Or have you checked such and such before filling out this application? If they have signed their application and they have not checked out these resources, which we would have to post, then they're incorrect and they have given us incorrect information. In the city of Philadelphia, which is a mess, every building application goes to the Historic Commission, and they just sign off on it saying it's not ours. But the point is because of what Ann said, everything, because of the nature of our community, every building and every site may be significant, including you could have a 1950s Cape Cod, but on a very significant tract of land. So how do we steer people to that place where they get to check off the boxes, given what Nancy has said, and be able to say to someone, you've given incorrect information?
Okay, well, first of all, if we want to take a proactive role, we can, number one, review the procedures and policies from the zoning administrator, the building department, and the planning board. All three refer either pre-projects or projects to the committee. And so it would be worth whoever you or whoever is going to be working on this to review those procedures that trigger reference to the committee. So that would be number one. I didn't mean to have us, by the way, go off on this tangent ad infinitum. So my suggestion would be that, number one. And I hate to keep turning to him, but there he is. Sebastian, if between you and Marty, you could just look at the status quo, number one, and then number two, where and how should it be adjusted to the protocols that the committee would like to propose. And then once that gets proposed, it goes to each of those three entities for input, and then it becomes workable policy. How about that?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, would it be okay, since Catherine escaped and Warren is still here?
Where'd she go? She
She
leave?
said she had to duck out.
She sent a chat message just saying, sorry, I have to run.
Okay,
Right.
thank you, Fred.
So my question is, Warren, could we get all of the forms together that one would normally use for the different channels of application, so that Sebastian and I can take a look at them and see what they are covering and what they aren't, so that we're not duplicating another part of the input, but we're looking for the information that might be missing?
Right, they're all posted on the town's website under planning board or zoning board right now. There are links to each one of them as PDFs you can download.
Okay, and then when we get this together, perhaps we might ask those groups if they were kind enough to add some language to their form?
Yeah,
Okay,
what do you mean kind enough? We have a
they
certain
don't have
kind,
to do anything, as we've said, for us. And I'm not telling them how they should run their business, but if they would have these heads up in their forms, then people might know where to look.
okay, fine. But they are looking to you, Marty, and the rest of us for input in making this committee work as efficiently and productively as possible. So it's not kindness on their part. They're looking to help. So
Yeah.
feel good. Okay. All
Okay,
right. Thank you both. I hope he didn't quit already, did he?
No, I'm
no, you're
still
still
here.
there.
I got, so I'm trying to take notes in a way that's kind of action oriented.
Great.
So I had 4 things written down, but it seems like I think we're only gonna do the last 2. The first one was checking with Melanie to ensure we're not committing or plagiarizing materials from other municipalities while developing the form.
You don't need to worry about that, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I don't think they would care.
Yeah.
The
The
second
the
one-
only issue with using forms from other municipalities is to make sure that the particular items apply here. So if it's an urban municipality and it's talking about the kinds of development we don't have in the town of Rhinebeck, then that's not appropriate. But we don't need to worry about plagiarizing. It's a public domain. We can freely borrow anything that's appropriate for use here, in my opinion.
Let me ask you a question, Warren, because one of my earlier jobs, meaning when I worked for a firm, is we would actually be hired by municipalities to write their guidelines.
Right.
And very often do a book, and frequently it was funded by a grant or whatever. But these are books and graphics that have frequently been paid for by these municipalities. And that's why I have trouble if we say it's in the public domain, because some of these preservation plans are very extensive and very well developed. So
Yeah, well, no, I understand what you're saying, and I'm sensitive to the whole copyright issue and paid work effort. I'm saying we're really not talking about taking wholesale someone's historic district requirements, because we're not doing that. I mean, that's done by the town. The town board has to adopt things, and it's
Okay.
executed. I'm merely saying if we're talking about references to a form to be filled out, and there's language, I don't really think we're talking about the same thing.
we're not there yet. I understand on guidelines. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right, Sebastian.
The other 3 things were Martin checking with the planning board to see if this makes sense for their process per Fred's recommendation.
I think we're going to
Right.
wait till we go through those forms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the next one then. So it's reviewing the building, planning, zoning departments that trigger referral to this committee. Download them from the town website. And then the 4th one is potentially developing this intake sheet using information from the comprehensive plan, and then developing a list of resources that the applicant can check before filling out the building application.
There you go. Perfect. And 1A or before all of that is those minutes. We are obligated at some point or another to have them available, even though the meetings are recorded. It makes no sense to me, but we are obligated. So thank you for doing skeleton minutes. Okay, can we move on to the role of the, sorry,
That's-
what?
Back to the basics. I want to be sure that our applications are presented to us and named according to the address. And a lot of times it'll be very vague as to where this property is located. And if you look very closely, you might find a property number, but you don't find the address many times. And I think it's very important that the application be labeled with the address.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nancy. You mean like Russell Avenue that they've
Yes.
got no address for? Like that one?
Has no number.
No address, but whatever. Okay. Anything else before we move on and pass the role of the committee clerk, who is already weighed down with all his responsibilities? Anything else in the intake form or the role of the committee clerk? No? Okay, thanks. And is there any new business? Anything you would like to see as a committee raise that we haven't already raised?
I'm concerned about the application on Route 9, rather 9G, that surrounds the Four Brothers.
You mean the Rhinebeck Villas? Or Mike's Tree Service?
It's up near
Something
Four Brothers Pizza.
around it's north of Four Brothers Pizza, and I think also south of Four Brothers Pizza. There was a map circulated. I don't know what they're calling the application.
Okay, this is embarrassing because I sit on the planning board and I have no idea which one it is. It's sounding a little bit to me like Mike's Tree Service, where they're putting in a kind of headquarters building and some parking.
I thought that one was going next to Mavis Discount Tire.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
that's on.
what I thought too.
Yeah, that's on
Yeah.
Route 9 across.
Well,
from-
the only other one on 99G is the Rhinebeck Villas.
I think
is
she's
that
talking about
it,
Rhinebeck
Nancy?
Villas.
Is that what she's talking about?
I doubt, it sounds more like that. It's not Mike's Tree Service. I've been watching ZBA meetings on that. It's right next to Mavis Discount Tire across from Williams.
The reason I'm very concerned about it is that it's a very important archaeological site. And
Really? Wow.
Back behind Four Brothers Pizza, I believe there's an Indian settlement that backs up to some of the properties on Lemon Lane. So is that what
There
you're
was
talking
a-
about?
there was a flint napping area in there,
Yep.
and that has a lot of archaeological significance.
Yeah.
Okay, Fred, could you help me figure out for sure which one it is? And then I'll be sure to get Nancy all of the
Yeah,
input.
but
and-
Nancy's concern is about the flint that's in the ground. There was an old ancient Indian settlement in the property behind. If you're going, Lemon Lane's a dead end. So if you're driving in from the direction from Liz's house, you know where Liz's house is.
Yeah,
And then it's all the archaeological stuff that I was told about is off to the right, behind the properties deep in the woods. But that also backs up on properties that are out on 9G, along where IXL is, then Gendron Caterers, then I think then next comes whatever the stuff is that's around Four Brothers. But behind Four Brothers, if somebody's developing in the woods back there, I'm pretty sure there's archaeological issues associated with old Indian settlements and flint that has been discovered there.
it's got to be Rhinebeck Villas.
Got to be
Okay.
Rhinebeck Villas.
Yeah, okay, Nancy, I'll put together or forward on to you what has been presented to the planning board so far. There's, they presented, I want to say, Fred's going to be better at this than me, a year ago or more. And they've just now started to come back. And there's a lot of controversy about rooms, room size, what's determined to be a room and how many people in a bedroom. And, there's a lot going on, but I'm pretty sure that's what you're referring to. And nobody has mentioned archaeology at all.
Yeah, Kathy, could you copy me on that?
You bet,
too,
for
please?
sure, for sure.
And before anybody gets very involved in an application, when there's a site like that, we need to have some way to be able to warn them off of destroying a very important site.
Okay. It's a really good point, Nancy. Thank you. And thank you, Fred, for
In all
refreshing.
all the discussions that I recall from ZBA meetings, and archaeological, historical has never been brought up. They seem to
No.
be focused on the definition of a guest room.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're
And then building
exactly
these
right.
rooms Pretty much
You're
like, almost like
exactly right.
apartments.
How many
I don't know
people
what the
can
intention-
sleep in a room?
Yeah.
You're so right. Okay, Nancy, thank you and Ann both for bringing that up, and let me see what I can forward on to you guys and raise awareness of. But Marty, there's a perfect example of, you know, something that has been going on for quite a long time and no reference, certainly to historic issues, never mind archaeological.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, anything else, guys? No? Thank you
Motion
so
to adjourn.
much for,
Motion to adjourn.
I know, I'm not through yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I was gonna try and say something nice.
Okay.
Like, thank you so much for your time and your input and your energy. I know this is not easy, and I know you all take time out of what's an incredibly busy day. So I know I and Warren are very grateful. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you so much, you guys.